There are no two components that are more influential for successful serialized storytelling than the world building and the character development put to the screen. These often go hand in hand, as effective world building must be organic and gradually introduced through the eyes of its characters, alongside their journeys of hardship and growth. However, today we'll be peeling back the layers and uncovering the mysterious truths behind masterfully designed worlds which keep viewers engaged from start to finish. And I can think of no better case study than Gravity Falls, a renowned show infamous for its interlocking mysteries, hilarious adventures, cozy Monster of the Week vibes, and fantastic character work. So let's dissect just how exactly they pulled it off and delivered one of the best shows and worlds to ever grace this godforsaken world of our own. So buckle up, because
the inflatable pool duck revolution is at hand.
For as long as I can remember, the term world building has been tossed around to either glorify or discredit any given film franchise or TV series, especially now with the recent rise of spin-offs for acclaimed hits. But what do we actually mean by this term? What does good world building actually entail? And what makes or breaks an interconnected universe? Well, for starters, world building is, simply put, a pretentious term for the process of constructing a fictional setting, taking into account coherent qualities such as history and culture, geography and ecology, politics and economics, etc. Anybody, author, game designer, filmmaker, whatever, who creates a new world from scratch, or even just adds fantastical elements to existing settings such as Hogwarts or Camp Half-Blood, is doing what we call world building. However, simply tackling and achieving that feat doesn't automatically make it good.
You can say that again.
We've seen a handful of cinematic universes at this point in time, and it's safe to say that all of the biggest and best ones have proven that they are not infallible. No one is too big to fail. Not even the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was really the first one, in my opinion, to push the envelope of cinematic world building and show us all just exactly what a coordinated effort of bright visual minds can accomplish within this medium. And I believe that one of the main reasons these worlds can so easily crumble on screen is that good world building is almost indistinguishable from bad. Well, let's just call it lazy, which oftentimes makes it easy to take the good for granted.
Really makes you think, huh, Morty? We should never take things for granted. What? I'm just saying, life's short. We shouldn't take things for granted. Are you saying granite?
And this is because there are only two requirements to properly establish a component of the setting. Something must be introduced and or set up for future use, and then either be utilized, referenced, or both. Character development works much in the same way, which we'll talk about next time. There needs to be proper foreshadowing to pay off a reveal down the line, or a twist where the story or world elements are broken in such a way that's still semi-consistent with the viewer's understanding of that world.
Sanderson's first law is about foreshadowing, right? Your ability to solve problems with magic in your books is directly proportional to how well the reader understands that magic. So, breaking is the same thing as this. But in a satisfying way, the way you break it is by letting the reader understand the magic and understand the holes in it. So when the break happens, they say one of two things. They say, that was foreshadowed and I saw this coming. Or they say, wow, this story demanded that happen all along and I didn't see it till now, you wily fox Sanderson.
So this begs the question, how exactly does one tell the difference? Well, because lazy world building is often unplanned, it runs the risk of seeming convenient or trivial, even inconsequential. Proper world building needs to be gradual and purposeful, every element intentionally introduced far before it becomes crucial to the story, world, and or characters. Much like a Deus Ex Machina evokes this wrongness in storytelling, lazy world building doesn't feel properly earned or satisfying. It just leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth, as if you just came out of a toddler's gnarly ramble session where he spit out some random story he just made up on the spot. However, I don't want you to fret, there are signs to look out for, and with a careful and trained eye, anyone can see the undeniable difference between good and lazy world building.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Have you ever felt like something came out of nowhere and wasn't properly signaled earlier on in a story? Have you ever thought to yourself, really? That's the best you could come up with? Or where did that come from? Why is this the first I'm hearing of this? Well, then you've experienced poor, lazy world building. Let's take a look at some key examples. With classic series such as The Lord of the Rings or The Wheel of Time, we can see how fusing together many pre-existing mythologies with new maps and languages to accompany these fictional lands and cultures can still feel like fresh, organic world building, where new elements are gradually introduced and either adding further context to previously established lore or setting up future reveals.
Oh yeah, that's a good stuff.
Compare that to something like Thor the Dark World or Thor Love and Thunder, because apparently the even-numbered Thor sequels just can't get it right. We can see how the world building breaks rules in dissatisfying ways, suddenly introducing world elements with no proper setup and then immediately being abandoned so that there is little to no impact on the greater story. It just all feels inconsequential and lazy. I've covered this subject before, but as a quick example, the worst component in that whole film was introducing Gore, the God Butcher, in a saga filled with godly introductions, only to then kill him off right away. And then we have Game of Thrones, which had awesome world building, until it came time to pay off certain plot lines and world elements in the later seasons. Some find issue with Daenerys Targaryen's swift change into the Mad Queen. Personally, I thought it had a sufficient amount of foreshadowing, given her father was the Mad King Aerys and was discussed at length throughout the show, telegraphing this twist from the very beginning. After all, it's a world where bloodlines denote much of a character's looks, personality, and future. However, I do agree that her arc was rushed towards the end, which again I think is evidence of poor planning and script writing of the later seasons. Now, comparing that to the assassination of the Night King, it's arguable that Jon Snow or Daenerys were properly set up for that feat from early on. However, the show pivoted to Arya, who was only set up within the last couple of seasons for this, the same ones that were rushed during the writing and production phases. And this is only made worse given that Arya had a kill list from early on in the show, and one, did not kill everyone on that list and thus didn't fulfill her show-long quest, and two, had an obvious lack of the Night King. Now, all this isn't to say that things need to be set up from the very beginning and can only be paid off towards the very end. I think mini arcs or self-contained stories are super important for building the world and its characters' development. Sometimes viewers just want to live and exist in these fictional worlds and nothing more, but we'll touch on that more in a bit. The main point here is that, simply put, when things don't add up or when they pop up out of nowhere to abruptly settle plot points or create this false sense of connection, it's an obvious sign of poor planning, which hurts these characters and the world they exist in. So long as a component is properly introduced, set up for future use, and the audience clearly understands it, then any callback will feel organic and well thought out. Which is why it's so easy to be tricked by lazy world building. One of my favorite examples of this is Mabel and Dipper playing minigolf in the cold open for Season 1, Episode 16, Carpet Diem. This is perfect setup for Mabel's skill in minigolf, which is later paid off and used in Season 2, Episode 3, Golf War, with an entire episode dedicated to the game. But I have no real way of knowing if this was planned setup for that episode or if minigolf was just on their mind when creating Carpet Diem, so they tossed it into the cold open. But either way, it doesn't matter because it feels planned. It feels organic and authentic. And so it's just another piece to the puzzle that is wonderful world building. So anyways, with all that talk on jargon and semantics out of the way, I think it's time we finally crack down on just how exactly Gravity Falls succeeded with its world building. I mean, this is a Gravity Falls video after all. I just thought that it would be easier to understand and appreciate the level of detail within this show and its world if we first fully understood just how easy it is to get wrong or for viewers to be tricked. Because let me assure you, Gravity Falls does it right. There are no tricks or lazy elements in my honest opinion, and there's a lot to be learned.
You can say that again.
Now, when it comes to the Gravity Falls approach, you'll find that its world building takes form in three key ways: adding to the supernatural lore and the mysterious anomalies that plague this town, setting up mysteries both big and small, especially through artifacts and tools, and expanding the cast of characters within the community. To its core, this is a mystery series, and it allocates all three of these world elements to its wide range of mysteries, from its smaller scale and self-contained ones to the greater overarching puzzles and conundrums. Sometimes it's a mix of all three, and sometimes it focuses on just a single element. And as I said earlier, it's important to have more self-contained episodes, even ones we'd call filler, because otherwise the greater overarching story begins to feel less grand or unique. Simply put, if every Marvel movie is an Avengers team-up, well, then it's not only harder to develop each and every character equally, but also harder to come up with interesting scenarios that maintain high levels of stakes and intrigue. And Gravity Falls is an expert when it comes to balancing huge event, high-concept episodes with its smaller-scale, character-focused episodes. Which is in no small part thanks to its hilarious writing and dynamic characters.
Sorry, but we don't serve minors.
Comedy gold!
But to see all this at work, let's take a deeper look, starting with the early episodes, and break down how they organically construct the town and its community, especially in regards to these three world elements. Starting off with the season premiere, Tourist Trapped, we get a slew of world-building components right off the bat, mainly introducing the Mystery Shack and the Mysterious Woods, Journal Number 3, as well as the overarching mystery of the author's identity and disappearance, and of course our monster of the week, the Gnomes, while also setting up the idea of zombies, which is later paid off in Season 2's premiere. I've always loved that connection. And we also get introductions for multiple townsfolk, including Grunkle Stan, Seuss, and Wendy, solidifying our core group of 5 when you add in Dipper and Mabel, the out-of-town visitors and main protagonists of the series. But a few other things this episode sets up are the Gnome's search for a queen, which is later paid off with Dipper recommending Gideon Gleeful, the Journal's mechanical location setting up the bunker episode in Season 2, and Dipper receiving his staple pine tree hat, and Mabel her grappling hook.
And I will have a grappling hook! Grappling hook! Grappling hook!
And then of course, lastly, we get the teasing tag of Stan's secret basement, which is yet another overarching mystery for the show. Now, episode 2 is much simpler, reeling things back a bit and focusing more on a character-driven plot, again, an important aspect of world building which gives time for viewers to catch up a bit more quickly. This one further builds out the community and its townsfolk, introducing people like Sheriff Blubbs and Deputy Durland, Lazy Susan, Toby Determined, Manly Dan the Lumberjack, Tyler Cutebiker, and Old Man McGucket. We are also introduced to Zyler and Kraz, Mabel's imaginary friends who are fictional characters from the show within the show Dream Boy High, who return at the end of both Season 1 and Season 2 when we visit Stan's and then Mabel's Mindscapes. It also introduces Lake Gravity Falls, which is depicted in many aerial shots throughout the show, but most notably is revisited for a big plot point in Season 1, Episode 15, The Deep End. However, perhaps the most important element that's introduced here is McGucket's genius invention, the Gobblewonker, which of course returns in Weirdmageddon Part 3, Take Back the Falls. But moving on to Episode 3, we get another more self-contained story here, a smaller scale mystery of who killed Wax Stan. This episode introduces many wax figure characters, only one of which returns a couple of times, including in the finale, Wax Larry King. We also get to meet Ducktective, another show within the show of Gravity Falls, the first instance of Mabel's waffle bodyguard, and Sandra Jimenez, a real reporter.
Chandra Jimenez, a real reporter.
I also think it's important to note here that this episode is already using recurring townsfolk like Toby and Manly Dan to drive forward this story. But continuing on to episode 4, we'll look at just a couple more here. We are finally introduced to Gideon Gleeful, who serves first as Stan's rival, but then also as Dipper and Mabel's. And it's revealed here that he has Journal Number 2, an artifact that is tied up in the episode's mystery revolving around Gideon's seemingly magical abilities. Lastly, episode 5 pits Dipper and Mabel together with Wendy as we get to meet her crew of friends, Lee, Nate, Tambry, Thompson, and Robbie, another rival of Dipper for the petty reason of love, seeing as this episode also sets up Dipper's show-long crush for Wendy, as they sneak into a convenience store and run into some old-timer ghosts. Alright, now, hopefully it's obvious to everyone just how craftily yet perfectly this show is building its world through introductions and setup. In just the first 5 episodes alone, they are utilizing an arrangement of world elements to expand the town and set up mysteries across it that will make viewers hungry for more intel. Most of the overarching mysteries have already been set up: Stan's basement, the journals and their author, and the town being a hotspot for supernatural anomalies. Heck, even though Bill Cipher won't make his appearance for another 14 episodes, there are plenty of allusions to his incoming presence, a resourceful tactic of the show that is priming viewers for his inevitable introduction. Look, when your show is riddled with mysteries for the characters and audience to solve, you'll want to gradually build upon those mysteries, making sure everyone understands the weight of each and every component before adding in new layers or making connections. And throughout the show, piece by piece, episode by episode, these mysteries are all fleshed out, layer after layer, setting up the show itself for success. Because only after everyone is on the same page and is able to understand the crucialness of each interlocking piece will the endgame truly matter. Only then will people actually care. And only then do you have a chance at doing something extraordinary.
Wow, that's deep. Really deep.
We could spend all day going episode by episode, tracking each and every introduction and observing their various payoffs, but I think it would be more worthwhile to focus on how the show pivots with Season 2 and sets up its spectacular finale. Because while setup is important, it's nothing unless it's properly used and paid off in the end. Season 1 itself is littered with introductions, but also callbacks as it weaves in new layers to the town and its mysteries. It perfectly sets up Season 2, which establishes a more serious tone, incites new mysteries such as with Journal Number 3 and its invisible ink messages, and shifts the focus to the author's identity even more so as Dipper really begins cracking down on solving that particular mystery. So let's compare those first 5 episodes of Season 1 to that of Season 2, paying special attention to the shift in the show's approach to focusing on payoff and utilization of the world rather than introductions. And as I just alluded to, the season premiere, Scarioki, which is one of my personal favorite episodes, marks a major shift of the show as it introduces government agents, which sets up the arguably best episode of the show, Not What He Seems, pays off that zombie undead setup from the series premiere, and reveals another layer to the mystery of the journals, showcasing that they have hidden messages written in invisible ink.
Ah! The journals! Sorry, just got excited there.
And all of this feeds into episode 2, Into the Bunker, where these messages push our characters into a secret bunker where they find the Doomsday laptop, which is a super important element of the show, one that is quickly utilized and elevated beyond just a simple MacGuffin. And we'll circle back to it towards the end of this video. Now, episodes 3 and 5 are more character-focused, with Gulf War focusing on Mabel's and Pacifica's rivalry, priming Pacifica for her semi-redemption arc, and using Mabel's skill in mini-golf, which we've already discussed. And with Seuss and the Real Girl focusing on Seuss and his love for video games, one of his main character traits. And even for such a simple character filler episode, it still connects to previous adventures, with Seuss referencing his time as a pig, which ironically enough was in Carpet Diem, the same episode with the mini-golf cold open, and sets up Mabel's future arc as a matchmaker, which will be paid off a few episodes from now with the Love God. But episode 4 is the most shocking one of these opening 5 in my opinion, as it brings back Bill freaking Cipher, utilizes the Doomsday laptop, fleshes out the mysteries regarding the dreamscape or mindscape, and uses Mabel's summer romance arc to further set up her selfishness, which, as we know, slowly drives a wedge between the Pines twins and eventually kicks off the events of Weirdmageddon. It's no mystery that Season 2 starts off with a bang and keeps the energy there, pivoting the show's world building from setup to payoff, and yet still finding ways to add new layers to the world and its characters as it gradually builds to its epic and satisfying conclusion. And we could certainly spend some time on the many connections within the finale, but I doubt I could unravel anything there that you haven't already discovered for yourself. No, instead, I'd like to skip ahead just 2 episodes to show how Gravity Falls brings it all together. That's right, it's Episode 7, Society of the Blind Eye, that I think perfectly encapsulates the show's masterclass level of world building, as it cashes in on the established world and character elements with callbacks and development, while also further setting up future story threads and connections. Right off the bat, it starts things off hot with its cold open, using the townswoman Lazy Susan and her beloved diner, Old Man McGucket, and the Monster of the Week creature from the series premiere, the Gnomes, to kick off the entire episode and tease this mysterious society. The episode uses Dipper's newfound drive to find the author, as well as Mabel's summer romance arc, to motivate their actions in this episode, pushing them towards the Society of the Blind Eye's lair, giving them the memory gun, the very same one that is used to vanquish Bill once and for all in the series finale, and paying off every episode before it that set up and teased McGucket's hidden genius and mysterious background. And it's this specific jaw-dropping reveal that is so satisfying and so well earned that speaks to the show's level of craft. For you see, the whole episode doesn't work until after McGucket is properly introduced and used as this crazy hillbilly. After the journals have been established, as well as Dipper's hunger for finding the author. After the season 2 premiere puts his hunt into full swing, and only after the Doomsday laptop has been unveiled and recovered. This episode pays off all the hints and clues, all the foreshadowing and groundwork that was laid for McGucket's hidden genius and knack for inventions. And it does it in the most random part of the season, only 7 episodes in, contributing to this season's shift towards the biggest reveal just a few episodes later that Stan's brother and McGucket's past colleague, Ford Pines, is the author.
You had a twin brother all along? That's the big twist we were waiting for?
What a ripoff!
I predicted that like a year ago.
There is no doubt in my mind that Gravity Falls mastered the art of world building. From setup to payoff, how it gradually introduced world elements and expanded upon them layer by layer, and how the show could suddenly shock its viewers with jaw-dropping reveals and events hidden within the most innocent-looking episodes, Gravity Falls understood the assignment. And it's hard to say that storytelling can get any better than this, even from such a whimsical, lighthearted, fantastical cartoon. Gravity Falls has been one of my favorite shows since it first aired, and there is no ceiling for the admiration and praise it so rightly deserves.
You can say that again.
We definitely covered a lot today, and rightly so, seeing as there's just that much detail within this show, and yet I didn't even get to mention the show's brilliant tie-ins with its shorts, like with Stan's mysterious tattoo or the comic books. There's even a new Book of Bill that just came out that I'm currently going through and would be happy to cover if there's enough interest for that. But as for now, I think I've talked your ears off enough. If you'd like something else to watch, I did put out a ranking for all 41 episodes, so you should definitely check that out if you're a fan. But I also have plenty of other rankings and video essays for other shows like Rick and Morty, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Bob's Burgers. I would definitely appreciate any support you're willing to give in my fight against the YouTube algorithm. As for what's next, I would still like to make that follow-up video on characterization and development, so long as there's enough interest and time. But I am already hard at work on another Cosmere video essay for my live-action adaptation series, so make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss that one. But as for now, I want to thank you for tuning in and sticking around. I will see you all next time.